Valentino's death, when the red dress became a thing of the past, he took away the classical era. Monday, the 19th of January, 2026. Winter in Rome usually carries a kind of moist solemnity. On this seemingly ordinary morning, a piece of news, like a fallen leaf in late autumn, quickly covered the top of global social media. Valentino Garavani passed away peacefully at his home in Rome at the age of 93. For most people, the name Valentino implies a kind of beauty that is almost vanishing from the modern context. In today's world, where fast fashion sweeps the globe, minimalism dominates aesthetics, and street brands deconstruct everything, it stands like an unshakable classical lighthouse. As his breathing ceased, the era of private yachts, hand embroidery, several meter-long tuxedos, and the aristocratic worship of female elegance finally slowly drew its heavy curtain. The official statement of the Valentino Garavani and Giancarlo Giammetti NDATON was very touching, but perhaps the most touching aspect was the atmosphere on the streets of Rome. His remains were placed at the brand, his historical headquarters at No. 23, Piazza Min IGN ELI, which was the palace where he had been stationed for more than half a century. Ending the 2 days of public viewing, countless women who had once entered the elite society, wearing the gowns he designed, as well as old tailors who sold thousands of pearls for a single piece of clothing in the workshop, all gathered here. 如果你去过罗马, you will understand the significance of that building to him. That was his starting point and also his destination. His funeral was arranged to be held in the Basilica of the Virgin Mary of Angels and Martyrs, a work by Michelangelo. Thigh's specification is not only a tribute to a designer, but also a farewell to the cultural totem of a country. When people mourn him, they often use the term Last Emperor. Thighs originated from that famous documentary, but it also precisely depicted his lifestyle. He was not merely designing clothes. He was maintaining an extremely refined and meticulous aesthetic order that was almost extinct even among the wealthy. Departure took away the last bit of cost, ignoring romance in the fashion world. The twin stars of Italian fashion have successively died out. The passing of Valentino has brought about a sense of emptiness and weightlessness throughout the entire fashion industry, largely because the fall of another giant was just too close. Over 4 months ago, in September 2025, Giorgio Armani passed away. If Armani and Valentino are the two flags of Italian fashion, then the successive fall of these two flags within less than half a year marks the collective retirement of the designers of the post-World War II generation who created the glory of made in Italy with their own hands. These two masters represent two completely different extremes in the Italian soul. Armani belongs to Milan, is modern and rational. He uses grayish-beige, deconstructed suits and minimalist lines to tell professional women how to be more powerful. His beauty is inwardly restrained. Like armor in the workplace, Valentino is Roman, classical and emotional. He embraced lace, bows, elaborate embroidery, and that captivating shade of red. His beauty blossoms outward, like a crown at the ball. Italian Prime Minister Giorgio Meloni called him an undisputed master of style in his eulogy. This evaluation is not exaggerated. In that glorious era, these two masters were like a duopoly in the fashion world, one ruling the day and the other the night. Armani defined the dignity of work, while Valentino defined the brilliance of social interaction. Now, this balance has vanished. The fashion industry is beginning to enter an era driven by professional managers and algorithms. Haute gauge Maison Valentino still shines in the hands of successors such as Pi RPA Olympique Cioli, and even welcomed the eccentric Alessandro Michele in 2024, the departure of Valentino himself. This means that the connection between the designer as the soul of the brand and the lifestyle itself has been completely severed. In his later years, he once said, "I love beauty. It's not just my fault." Thigh's almost naive paranoia might be the most precious legacy he left to this increasingly mediocre world. The young man who dreamed in Voghera was stubbornly determined to conquer Paris. Great stories usually have an ordinary but foreshadowing beginning. Valentino was born in Voghera, Lombard, Italy, in 1932. It was a typical Italian town with a slow and peaceful pace of life. His father ran an electrical appliance business, which was considered a decent family background at that time. Valentino later self-mockingly said that he had been a spoiled child since childhood. While other children were rolling in the mud, he had already begun to be picky about the leather of his shoes and the button positions of his coat. His mother, Teresa, had almost blind support. For him, Wien the teenager showed an interest in fashion rather than the family business. She did not stop him, but instead sponsored him to learn sewing. Valentino's aesthetic enlightenment originated from the cinema. In that era without the internet, the magnificent costumes worn by Hollywood actresses on the screen were his entire imagination of the outside world. Jadwiga Garlandi, Lana Turner, the sea-shining names on his doodle-like exercise books turned into flowing lines. At the age of 17, Valentino 做了一个改变人生的决定，去巴黎。在巴黎，在1949年，这是由 Christian Dior 的 New Look 主导的黄金时代。Haute was the purest period of haute couture. There, he entered the renowned Paris Haute Couture Union School. It was during that period that he successively worked as an apprentice in the workshops of Jean Desai and Jean Lenengue. In Dessinerie, he learned how to handle the chiffon as thin as a cicada's wing, and how to make a woman look like a goddess stepping out of a Greek temple through intricate pleats. For Lan Jishu, he shifted from the illusory artistic creation to the down-to-earth garment-making process. Thai's apprenticeship was of vital importance to him, endowing Valentino with a rigorous French framework and an Italian romantic soul. It was at that time that he established his aesthetic tone. Haute couture should not be an embellishment of life. It should be the highest form of life. He encountered a blood-red romance that would change his life. If Valentino's life is an epic, then Rosso Valentino is the theme song that runs through it all. Many brands have their own signature colors, but none is as seamlessly integrated with the name of the brand's founder as Valentino Red. The birth of this color originated from a trip to Barcelona during his apprenticeship. It was a night at the Opera House where Bizet's Carmen was being performed. The young Valentino was sitting in the audience, but his eyes were not completely drawn to the stage. His gaze was fixed on an old woman in the box. According to his later recollection, the woman had silvery hair, but was wearing a deep red velvet dress. Among the surrounding camp of black and white gowns, she was like a burning flame, aloof, passionate, and extremely confident. At that moment, Valentino was hit. He realized that red was the only color that could make a person stand out instantly in a crowd. It doesn't care about skin color. It only cares about courage and insight. He once dissected this red formula in detail: 100% magenta, 100% yellow, and 10% black. Thai-S is a pure red without any melancholy tint. Over the following half-century, no matter how the fashion trends shifted, at every Valentino show, there was always a red dress, usually the grand finale. Thai-S shade of red became a rule for him. It symbolizes the energy of life, passion, and an unassailable feminine charm. It is not merely a combination of dyes. It is Valentino's highest declaration of beauty. If the world is gloomy, then he will use this touch of red to burn it out into a brilliant exit. Thai-S is Valentino. He brought back technology from Paris and soul from Barcelona. He was going to establish his own empire in Rome. Giammetti was a great combination of the left and right brain. If Giancarlo Giammetti had not appeared in Valentino's life, the history of fashion might have just had one more frustrated tailor. 1959年 Valentino 在罗马的 Viacom.I 开设了他的第一个工作室，怀抱着巨大的雄心。At that time, his mind was filled with the intricate craftsmanship and expensive fabrics of Paris, and he had almost no concept of the phrase breaking even. He was like a stubborn artist, only caring about buying the most expensive silk and hiring the top embroiderers. As a result, he soon fell into a financial quagmire, and the company was once on the verge of bankruptcy. It was at this turning point that on July 30, 1960, in a paradise and cafe on Via Veneto in Rome, Valentino met Giammetti, an architecture student. This encounter was later passed down in the fashion world for more than half a century. It was not only the meeting of two souls, but also the beginning of the most successful two-person governance model in the history of fashion. Giammetti keenly noticed that Valentino's talent was being buried by trivial bills, so he made an astonishing decision to give up his studies in architecture and join Valentino, taking full responsibility for business operations. The IR division of labor is extremely clear. Even with a kind of cruel efficiency, Valentino is in charge of beauty and Giammetti is in charge of money. Valentino could fly into a rage over the wrong color of a button, while Giammetti was scheming behind the scenes on how to sustain these costly outbursts through franchising and global expansion. The two were once lovers, but later transformed into business partners who were more in tune with each other than family members. Giammetti once joked, "Valentino is responsible for making women beautiful, while I am responsible for making this a business." This model was later emulated by Yves Saint Laurent and Berger, but the combination of Valentino and Giammetti has always had an extra layer of warmth. Giammetti was Valentino's shield. He shielded the coldness of capital and the clamor of the market, allowing the emperor to reign intently in his ivory tower for 45 years. In the noisy age, he shocked the world with his Colo Esniesni. It was the late 1960s. TRT was a turbulent and rebellious era. The hippie movement swept world. Pop art was all the rage, and the fashion world was filled with psychedelic prints, cheap colors, and crazy deconstruction of tradition. Just when everyone was trying to please the young with colors, Valentino did something extremely rebellious in 1968. He launched the famous White series. The S series is entirely composed of white, cream, and ivory, without any superfluous colors. In that gaudy era, this set of pure designs that were almost sacred was like a clear spring, instantly silenced all the noise. This collection not only demonstrates his mastery of ultimate tailoring, but also marks the birth of an important symbol, the V logo. Valentino did not print the logo on clothes in large areas like modern brands do. He hid that elegant in the buckle of his belt or in the seam of his pocket. This subtle and aristocratic brand expression established Valentino as dominant position as an established luxury brand. At that moment, the White series attests to Valentino's aesthetic intuition. When the world becomes chaotic and cheap, only the purest craftsmanship and the most restrained colors can lead to eternity. This is also why, even today, no matter how fashion trends change, that white evening dress with the V logo remains an inescapable monument in the history of fashion. The woman who elevated Valentino to a pedestal. Valentino once said that there were only a few of the most important clients in his life, but Jackie Kennedy was undoubtedly the one who changed his fate. The IR connection began in 1964. At that time, Jacqueline saw a Valentino suit with a strong architectural sense on a friend and personally contacted the Italian designer. At that time, Jacqueline was in the mourning period following the assassination of President Kennedy. Valentino designed 6 haute couture gowns in black and white for her. This restrained and solemn beauty not only comforted a wounded heart, but also allowed the world to see Valentino's ability to handle complex emotions. The real peak occurred in 1968, when Jacqueline decided to marry the Greek shipping magnate Onassis. She did not choose a traditional French wedding dress, but a short ivory-colored lace dress from Valentino's white collection. The photo of Jacqueline walking gracefully into the wedding venue in a short dress instantly made the front pages of global media. This dress breaks the stereotype that a wedding dress must be a long one, presenting a modern and free image of an elite woman for the Valentino brand at that time. Jacqueline was not merely a client. She was a living global advertisement. It was precisely because of her endorsement that Valentino successfully opened the door to the US market. In the decades that followed, from Elizabeth Taylor to Princess Diana, from Audrey Hepburn to Julia Roberts, these muses of the times all willingly became members of the Valentino tribe. The essence of this relationship is not a transaction, but a symbiosis. The sea women found their shining moments through Valentino as clothes, while Valentino made the leap from a designer to a style def in art through them. How Elizabeth Taylor dominated aesthetics with the red carpet. If Jacqueline is Valentino as elegant endorsement, then Elizabeth Taylor is his most loyal ally in the Hollywood arena of fame and fortune. As early as 1960, when Taylor was filming Cleopatra in Rome, she developed a deep friendship with Valentino. At that time, Taylor was the center of Hollywood, and every move she made was surrounded by the spotlight. At the premiere of Spartacus, Taylor wore a white feather dress designed by Valentino, and that scene was enough to be recorded in film history. Taylor is well aware of her commercial value, and her interaction with Valentino is very interesting. ACC Ord, 19 met TI's recollection. Taylor would sometimes point directly at those expensive gowns and say, "I've brought you so much exposure today, so I deserve this one, that one, and this one," and Valentino is always willing to give it away. THIS was an extremely advanced opinion leader marketing strategy at that time. Taylor not only wears Valentino in her daily life, but also in her movies, and even on major occasions like receiving an Oscar. THIS long-termism investment reaped its most classic rewards in 2001. 那一年 Julia Roberts 赢得了奥斯卡最佳女主角奖，为 Never Come Promise. She accepted the award wearing a black and white vintage dress by Valentino from 1992. This dress was rated as one of the 10 most beautiful gowns in the history of the Oscars. It proves that Valentino's designs have a resilience that transcends time. They do not look outdated after 9 or 19 years, but rather like fine wine becoming more and more fresh with age. This is precisely Valentino's design philosophy. He does follow the trend. He is the tide himself. In the Roman workshop, every thread was a devout religion. NTRING the Valentino, or KSHOP located in Piazza Agneli in Rome. You will experience a sense of time and space dislocation. Her there are no assembly lines, no noisy machines. On LY, dozens of old tailors in white coats are bending over to meticulously carve a formal dress. Valentino, the obsession with craftsmanship, is almost obsessive. He insists on using an ancient technique called badel ini, which requires tailors to create the texture of the fabric bit by bit with extremely fine rolls of cloth. This technique takes a very long time and is extremely difficult, he once said. I don't want to see any imperfections. If you think there is a 1 millimeter deviation in the embroidery here, just take it apart and start over. Under this pursuit of perfection, a Valentino Haute Couture dress often requires thousands of hours of labor, and its price is comparable to that of a luxury sports car. But this kind of high cost is dignified. In the hands of these old tailors, fabric is no longer an industrial product, but is endowed with life. TH's persistence seems extremely extravagant in the fast-paced consumption era of the 21st century. But precisely because of this, Valentino became the last emperor. He preserved the last dignity of haute couture, that is the awe for the ultimate beauty that human hands can create. He was not merely making clothes, he was keeping vigil for the aesthetic dignity of humanity within the ancient walls of Rome. He found the right rhythm to dance in the capital. In the fashion circle, there are far too many stories of genius designers being swallowed up by capital. Some committed suicide due to the loss of control. Some retreated because they couldn't bear the pressure of financial statements. But Valentino, under the protection of Giammetti TI, completed a textbook-level, elegant retreat. The business history of the Valentino brand is simply a condensed history of consolidation in the modern luxury goods industry. As early as the 1970s, Giammetti began to carry out bold franchising. You may not know that back then, even tiles, perfumes, and bed sheets could bear Valentino as logo. Although this strategy diluted the brand as sense of luxury to some extent, it brought in an astonishing cash flow, allowing Valentino to support those high-end customization businesses that only serve a few hundred customers a year without any reservations. By 1998, Valentino and Giammetti realized that it was no longer realistic to rely on personal management to counter the wave of globalization. The Y sold the company to the D Grow Up, which is controlled by the head of Fiat, for $300 million. Over the next 2 decades, the brand was passed from hand to hand among capital giants like a baton, from M.D. to textile giant Marzotto, and then to private equity firm Premier A. The most legendary turning point occurred in 2012 when Voghera, an investment institution from the Qatari royal family, spent €700 to turn Valentino into a true royal asset. It was precisely because of the abundant funds of the Qatar that the brand was able to complete its brand upgrade and global expansion in the 2010s. It was not until 2023 that Carentin, the parent company of Gucci, entered the game and purchased a 30% stake. FIS actually sends out a signal, although the old emperor is no longer on the front line. The empire he built with his own hands remains the most alluring pearl in the capital market. Valentino's shrewdness lies in the fact that he has always retained the absolute right to speak on creativity. Even when ownership changes, his aesthetic dictatorship has never wavered. The grand show in 2008 was both the emperor's enthronement and abdication ceremony for himself. If a man is to leave at the age of 93, he must hope that people will remember his most glorious moment. For Valentino, that moment was frozen in Paris in 2008. That was his grand farewell show to officially announce his retirement. At the Rodin Museum in Paris, all the top models, film stars, and political figures of the past half-century gathered on the spot. As the runway was drawing to a close and the lights dimmed, dozens of models, all dressed in uniform Valentino red evening gowns, filed out one after another, like a flowing stream of lava, covering the entire catwalk. Theater's scene was so stunning. CS is not merely a fashion show, it is the final farewell of an aesthetic master. If you have watched the famous documentary Valentino, The Last TMP ROR, you will see a more authentic Valentino with a human touch. In the film, he shouted at his assistant, was anxious over the slightest creased shadow, and even quarreled with Giammetti in front of the camera like an old couple. The re is a detail in the film. Valentino is sitting on his private yacht, surrounded by several pugs that are always by his side. He sighed and said, "I love beauty. It's not just my fault." He did live up to the lifestyle. He had shaped himself, skiing in a wooden house in Gasteiz, Switzerland, and holding private banquets in a Rome and palace. Not only did he design the nobility, but he also lived his own life as one. What he took away was not only tailoring and needlework, but also that kind of classical romantic sentiment that could waste everything for beauty. Red will never fade away. He has left the most beautiful legacy to the digital age and future generations. The most admirable thing about Valentino is that he has never been complacent in the past. Meanwhile, veteran designers are repelled by the internet and even hostile to it. But in 2011, Valentino did something extremely ahead of his time. He spent millions of dollars to build a virtual museum together with Giammetti. In this digital archive, you can use 3D technology to closely examine the structure of every classic dress from the past half-century. He once joked, "Since the space in physical museums is limited, I'll create an eternal home for my beauty on the internet." This forward-looking vision has enabled his precious designs to transcend the lifespan of fabric and become eternal codes in the digital age. What is even more remarkable is that he personally selected and witnessed the growth of his successor. In the final years of his tenure, Pier Paolo Piccioli and Maria Grazia-Chiuri took over the REINS. Piccioli is very impressive. Not only has he maintained Valentino as red, but he has also created the riveted shoes that drive young people crazy and the Pink PP Pink series, enabling the brand to successfully capture Generation Z while maintaining elegance. In 2024年, when the more radical and eccentric Alessandro Michele took over Valentino, the outside world once worried that Valentino would be unhappy. But it is said that in his last public appearance before his death, Valentino watched Michele's debut show through FaceTime and showed great joy. He understands that beauty does not need to be sealed away, it needs to be iter-ed. On January 23, 2026, when his coffin passed through the streets of Rome and headed for that grand church, the women along the way might wear that touch of red to see him off. When he left, there was the protection of GIME tie by his side, the remembrance of countless MUSES, and the aesthetic empire he had built with his own hands continuing to operate. Valentino Garavani has left, but at every moment when we need a little bit of elegance, a little bit of strength, a little bit of inappropriate romance, that touch of red will always quietly burn at the end of the red carpet, in people's memories. Gudabi, the last emperor, what you just saw is merely a fragment of the truth. Welcome to the Da Vinci Matrix, the ultimate operating system for the Super in the EVI Dual. We are decoding the world, one algorithm at a time. Click left to rewire your brain. Click right to witness the future. Don't be a spectator. Join the fleet. Subscribe now before the AI takes over.